Hello, this is Ned Stark. You're listening to the Dopey podcast. I've never fancied the milk of the puppy myself, but I understand its allure. Stay strong, Dopey Nation, and toodles.
Dopey podcast, Dopey Nation, we're all in. Dopey Nation, Dopey podcast, Dopey Nation, stay strong. Dopey podcast, stay strong, we're all in. We're so alive. Dopey podcast, stay strong, we're all in. Dopey Nation. Alright, that's it. Fuck that. That's good.
This episode of Dopey, the podcast on drugs, addiction, and other dumb shit, is brought to you by our friends at Aloe Recovery. Aloe Recovery is located in sunny Southern California, founded by our good friend Bob Forrest and his friend Evan and their friend Bob, and their mission was to create a program that made addicts feel comfortable and respected, so that when you were fucked and you went to Aloe, you felt like you were well cared for. I went to a million places and never felt particularly well cared for, or very rarely. Aloe offers a very, very safe and comfortable detox. They offer years and years and years of treating co-occurring mental health disorders, and they have more beautiful amenities, anemones. They don't have sea anemones at Aloe. They have amenities. They have more beautiful amenities than you can shake a stick at. They got horseback riding and sound bath meditation and fucking surfing. I say if you're fucked and you're in California and you need a place to go to Aloe. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at Just Coffee Co-op. I'm drinking a cup of Just Coffee right now. I have it iced. It's the extra dark blend. It is delicious. I've been French pressing it. I'm at my dad's house right now. I'm dripping it. I'm going to read the side of the bag. I love the side of the bag. The side of the bag. The bag is beautiful, by the way. I'm drinking the Revolution Roast. It's revolutionary, delicious. The logo is some sort of Rage Against the Machine star with a dude with a wrench. It says, since the start, we've done business the right way. Certifications and stamps of approval are not enough. We do it for the satisfaction of building relationships between small-scale farmers, their communities, our co-op, our customers, and our community. Doing justice to beans and beings is our durable promise. That's who we are. That's who we'll always be. And that's Just Coffee Co-op. If you put in Dopey Pod, you will save money. And you'll be supporting the brand. I'm going to throw a picture up of what a dopey blend of the coffee would look like. So if you want to support the show, go to justcoffee.coop, enter Dopey Pod, and get some delicious coffee. And here is the show. So hello and welcome to Dopey, the podcast about drugs, addiction, and other dumb shit. And I'm Dave, and there's this whole thing. I mean, it's not even a thing, but I've been reading Reddit more than I should, perhaps, and somebody wrote, whatever happened to when Dave used to say, and other dumb shit, instead of just, and dumb shit. And the funny thing about this is that it's something I think about all the time. Back in the day when we started making the show, me and Chris, I don't think we said, Dopey, the podcast on drugs, addiction, and dumb shit for a while. And I think in the beginning I did say another dumb shit, but I never liked the way it sounded compared to and dumb shit. But this Reddit guy really likes the way other dumb shit sounds. He thinks it's good shtick. So that was a tribute to that Reddit guy. And hello, everybody. I hope you guys are well. I'm good. It was my birthday last week, as you guys are well aware, and I want to tell you a funny story about what happened last week for my birthday. it was last Saturday, and unfortunately, I had to work on my birthday. But where I work, it's like part of the deli workers union contract that everybody that works there is entitled to a birthday cake. Now, that might be in the contract, but I've worked there for many, many years, and I think I've gotten one cake. And I really like it when people celebrate my birthday. Like, it's a big deal to me. I like it. I like the attention. I like feeling like I have friends. I like the whole thing. But I'm also trying to mitigate my expectations. And I'm like, they're not going to get you the cake, but that's okay. You know, it's okay. And I remember one year I had to ask for the cake, and they still didn't give me the cake, and I threw a fit. And I was like, this year, I'm not going to throw a fit, and I'm not going to ask for the cake. I'm going to be okay with whatever happens. It was like my sober birthday promise to myself. And I was feeling pretty good. It was my birthday. I don't know, the show was out. I was feeling good. I had friends coming over on Sunday, like old friends. People that you guys know from the show came over. Jim came over, Greg came over, and Devin came over, and their wives and kids. So Saturday, I was just kind of soaking it in and doing a really, really crazy shift. So I'm working, and all I can think about is, don't think about your birthday, don't think about your birthday. And everyone's like, hey, the birthday boy, blah, 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 blah. I want a big piece of cake, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, dude, we're probably not going to get any cake. And my dad shows up at the restaurant, and he's carrying this big bag with a cake in it. And he's like, I brought you a cake for your birthday, and you could share it with the guys in the store. And I said, no, we're not going to eat that cake. We're not going to give that cake to the guys in the store because the boss owes me a cake, and I'm going to have the store's cake. I don't want your cake. And then the manager even said, don't worry, Alan, go home. We're going to buy him a cake. So, and my dad was smart enough to say, you're not going to buy him a cake. And I said, yes, they are. They're going to buy me a cake. And he leaves. And again, I just keep my shit together, and I don't ask for the fucking cake. But I'm still in the back of my head, I'm expecting the cake. And time passes, and now it's 4:00, and there's still no cake. And everybody's like, oh, happy birthday. Where's the cake? Where's the cake? And I'm like, I'm not going to fucking blow my cool. I'm not going to lose my cool and demand the cake. And so I keep working, and now it's 6. And one of them, and I'm working till 8. I work from 9 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night waiting tables. I probably walked 9 miles in this deli. And the guy, the manager says, oh, what time are you leaving? And I said, I don't know. It's getting slow, meaning like, if you're going to give me the cake, you should give it to me soon. And he's like, don't worry, blah, blah, blah. And I keep working. I sing happy birthday to somebody else. This nice man, his name was Randolph. I got the whole store to sing him happy birthday. And then it's 7 o'clock, and there's no cake, and the restaurant has gotten quiet, and I'm like, fuck this. And I just couldn't contain myself anymore, and I just start screaming, like, where's my cake? If I was Dominican, I would have gotten a fucking cake. Everybody in this place gets a cake but me. Where's my cake? And but I tried to play it off as a joke, but I was very upset. And so I leave after I threw the whole fit, and I had blown my cool, and I make it like 2 blocks, and there's a text on my phone, and somebody at work sent me a picture of a cake that said "Happy Birthday, David" on it, and he said it was in the freezer the whole time. We forgot to take it out, and I was like, oh my God. And they were like, you can have it tomorrow, and I was like, I'm not coming in tomorrow. And then I rose to the occasion. I said, you guys enjoy my cake. And that's my birthday story. So before we get to the interview, I just want to thank my buddy Harold, who did the punk rock music at the front. Harold's a friend I met in treatment 1,000,000 years ago. And we have a deal, which is when I play his jingle, I will mention his Instagram account, which is Health Collective 666. Me and Harold have this shirt on the way, so look for that soon. I've always loved Harold. Love his music. Love the guy. Big fan. So this week's guest is this guy. His name is AJ Daulerio. He was the editor-in-chief of Deadspin and Gawker, and he was the center of this crazy controversy regarding Hulk Hogan. He put out a sex tape of Hulk Hogan without his permission, and got sued for $115 million. There was this crazy documentary on Netflix about it, and I think AJ put himself through the ringer, and he wanted to tell his story on Dopey, and so here is AJ Daulerio.
Good evening. Thank you for calling the Kinston Everly. This is Billy. How may I assist you?
I'm trying to get to room 1520.
Alrighty. Do you have the last name on the room?
It should be Daulerio. Daulerio.
Alright. Let me take a look. Perfect. I can connect you. One moment.
Thanks.
Hello.
Hey, man. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I just got your fancy pants hotel receptionist on the show.
Well, it's your fancy pants hotel receptionist. I'm doing this for you.
We've made this clear that you're not doing it for me. I told you don't do it for me. I told you the FaceTime audio is good enough. You said, and I think it was a euphemism for taking a shit, that you have to drop your kids off at the pool. Sorry.
No.
That's what you said.
I actually came here with my young children because the pool here is quite lovely, and they love to be in the water. So I figured at the same time it would benefit them and it would benefit you. But I thought of the idea because of you.
You're not Jewish, right?
No.
But this is very, very, very palpable guilt you're playing with here. This is a serious. I told you not to do it for me. Doing it for me is.
It's fine. I'm a supporter of the show. I'm a patron. I call you and tell you that when you're doing things great. I make some minor suggestions about how to make it better. And I'm basically here for you. And the last time we spoke, you said the audio was terrible, and I didn't want to put you through that again. So I made doubly sure that it wouldn't happen this time.
Wow, you're
and
really
I'm having a nice time with my family.
I think I want to just say thank you. And before that, I want to introduce you. I want to do what you said not to do. I want to read your Wikipedia page. I'm into it.
Great. Yeah.
This is is it AJ Daulerio or Daulerio?
No, it's Daulerio. There's an E. There's no O. And there's, what do you mean Daulerio? Why do you say Daulerio?
I don't know.
It says Daulerio.
Daulerio.
Yes.
I've been saying it wrong this whole time.
We can do this again. We can try, in a couple weeks. And
I want you to get a nicer hotel. If we do it again, I want a nicer hotel.
Well, if I do it again, I'll just fly out to, where are you, Staten Island?
Oh, stop it. Is that a joke? Do you know about Staten Island? Staten Island.
No, you're in Long Island, right? You're in the fishy parts.
I'm in deep Long Island. Now, AJ Daulerio is an infamous character, an infamous recovery character. He's most well known for being the ex-editor in chief of the What'd you call Gawker? A blog? A website? What is it?
Yeah. I mean, I either one works.
Of Gawker, and his crazy claim to fame was getting sued by the Hulkster Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan, for releasing a sex tape of it.
Terry Bollea with an A. There's no O.
Terry Bollea.
E-A. It's clear that you're prejudiced against Italians. So
it might be. My wife is Italian, so I don't think so. But either way, AJ is now a fine and fit a brother in recovery. He has a beautiful recovery-based newsletter called The Small Bow, and welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. I really wanted to be on the show for about 6 months when I first heard about it, and we have our mutual friend Joe Schrank, who you have on a lot, I believe.
I think I've had him on thrice.
Oh, really? Well, okay. But, I mean, he said good things. And, I obviously became I think, more of a super fan after the NPR piece. And then, I've been a little obsessive about it. But, I mean, mostly I just, I'm obsessive about it to critique you, unfortunately. I mean, we've kind of, I feel like we've started off kind of just having this combative relationship. But I think that'll work well for this interview. I'm hopeful, at least.
Well, I wanted to start with the initial conversation that we had, because it might have been the best conversation I've ever had with anyone, where you just said such great things about the show and me. So why don't you talk about why you love the show before we talk about you?
Yeah. No, I'd be happy to do that, because I mean I think that what you do in this space, and I think we talked about a little bit about what I considered the Mount Rushmore of the recovery kind of content or entertainment space, and they're usually the typical people. Most of the people you've had on this show, and you've been on their show, I won't name names. I think people will know who they are. But, your show, in both of its iterations, both when Chris was alive, was basically the idea that I had heard in rehab from a lot of people, where I thought it would be a good idea, with a lot of people who had a lot of rehab time and a lot of great war stories, and who enjoyed telling them. And it was I think, very cleansing in its way. As a person who was in treatment, I saw that firsthand. And I said that, you obviously tapped into something with that. But, the way the show is now, without Chris, and, rest in peace, and I'm very sorry, is something that's extremely unique, because, you are doing something kind of on the fly, and it's great sometimes it's not so great. But
this isn't as good a conversation as the first conversation we had. I don't remember anything.
Because the thing is, I think that you have tapped into something with a lot of potential, and I think that just you can kind of just take over this space where there are a lot of people who have just occupied this space for a long period of time, and I think that what you do is bring a lot of good energy to something, and a little more. I like the fact that you don't really plan too far ahead with this stuff, and you try to kind of just be exactly who you are when you have these interviews.
Well, I want it to be fun.
Anywhere, I mean, you clearly made a mark on you. So why don't you tell me what I said?
I don't remember. It was probably the best conversation I've ever had with anybody, though. You said everything I've ever wanted to hear, and for that, I don't remember any of it because my memory is terrible. But for that, I'll always be grateful. So tell me about the Small Bow. It is I will start there because it's something that you're doing. You're trying to give something back to the recovery world. And I think it's good. It's good that you get to do it. It's a little newsletter because it's kind of taking a similar space as Dopey, in that it's something that recovering people can peruse when they have nothing else to look at and feel kind of at home in the same way that Dopey makes them feel at home, I think.
I've had good responses to it in a way that I think you have had as well. It's very, but it's essentially just a recovery newsletter that I wanted to put out because when I first got out of treatment, and as a person who has worked on the internet and around the internet for years, I think I had kind of assumed that the internet would have a lot to offer in this space that I would be interested in, and it does. There's a lot there. But there were two things that actually just stuck out to me. And the one thing there was this one story in Harper's Magazine called The Drunks Club. And, it's by this person named Clancy Martin. I highly recommend anybody that's in 12-step or AA read it. And I just thought it was so beautifully written. And I also thought it was basically just nothing we'd ever read about kind of 12-step or recovery at that point. And I was just why isn't there more stuff like this out there? And then the second thing I don't know if you're ever familiar with the You Made It Weird podcast with
Pete Holmes.
Harris Whittles and Pete. Like I heard that, and I heard Harris Whittles speak 30 days in and back out, whatever, and I never heard anybody kind of talk. I think I never heard anybody so alive in recovery.
That was also that was super influential to Dopey. I heard that. I remember I was standing in my old apartment and I was smoking cigarettes out a tiny window in my kitchen, listening to that and thinking, that was the only thing I had ever heard that kind of made me feel almost like Howard Stern made me feel, like it was real. And then, but it's so good. But it also spoke to my experience, and it was like it put a little seed in my brain. Did you know that Harris Whittle's sister was on Dopey?
No, I did not.
She came on to promote her book about Harris, and I have a feeling it was one of the first episodes that we had done when Chris had started to relapse, because he did not handle himself well. He was a total he was a total dick to her, and he was really, he was notably impatient when we had guests on, but with her he just fucking hated her. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was because he was using in retrospect. And I never look at the numbers of the show, but I'm pretty sure it was close to the end of his life. So anyway, back to You Made It Weird and the impact You Made It Weird or Harris and that whole thing had on the Small Bow. You heard that and you were inspired?
Well, I heard that and I was just like, why isn't there more of this? Right. Why isn't there something like everything seems kind of just like so saccharine and everybody is almost forced to tell the same story over and over again, because that means you're taking it seriously, right? That's kind of the whole kind of just like, when you go through 12 steps, you're not supposed to even call it, you're not supposed to say you're an A, you have all these rules and you're supposed to kind of just like, I think the people who are respectful of it, also basically just do a little bit of a disservice by not kind of sharing just like exactly who they are as people, not just people in the program, right? I wanted more people because I think that recovery in itself, like I know you do. The kind of war story type stuff. But for the Small Bow, it's basically just like, I was thinking, I don't want bottoms. I don't want the redemption. I want kind of the boring parts in the middle. And, what the slog of recovery is like for people, like what new stupid activities do people do now that they don't drink or use? Do they knit? Do they? Tell me about sometimes where it's basically that the only place that it makes sense would be a site that's recovering people can read it, right? It's just like I think the stories are very, very unique, but I think that there's a tendency in the recovery space to tell stories that they think normal people wouldn't like. So I think that's why it's either just overly sanitized or overly scandalized.
Well, the irony there is that normal people would actually love to hear those banal stories of recovery. And I think my new gardening segment would really be, I think maybe you should give me a little gardening column in the Bow.
I would love that. Yeah.
We can call it.
I think it's just like, more than anything else.
Dude, AJ, wait. We call the column "The Grass Is Always Greener" with Dave from Dopey.
It's not bad.
Come on.
It's terrible, but not bad.
The grass is always greener. I'm actually struggling with my garden right now because my sprinkler guy isn't showing up because I'm too stupid. Yeah. I don't know how to turn on the fucking water to the sprinklers. And I fucking call this guy. I'm begging. It's like calling your fucking dealer. I'm begging him to come over to turn a valve in my house and to pay him. And he's ignoring me. And today I called him, because I called him on Sunday. I called him on Monday. I called him on Tuesday. And today I called him and I said, I can give somebody else my money. you know, and I felt like such a dick.
You said that. You said that exact phrase.
I said it on the voicemail. I said, this is the fourth time I called you, and it occurs.
This is a jerk off. That's like probably the daddest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Jesus, man.
I know. And then he called me back, and he sounded like such a
give
dick.
Someone else my money. Mm-hmm.
I said, I think there are other people that I could pay to do this, is what I said.
I hope it's effective.
No, I got to call somebody else, because this guy, he's going to destroy everything because I'm a dick. He's going to destroy my whole shit because I'm a dick.
I mean, that's kind of, but I mean, I think that is kind of just like, you know, the fact that you came to that conclusion too late, that still proves that how great your recovery is.
But it's too late. What do you mean? Explain. You're saying that my recovery could use a little bit of tweaking, is what you're saying.
No. I'm saying that I think that at least, like, the fact that at least you walked yourself through this moment where that logic that you have there is saying just like, I was just addicted to this guy. Why? Now, even if he takes the job, he's probably going to piss on everything. You know, that's like stuff that, I mean, we try to apply beforehand, right?
I know.
You know, it's just like you don't want to react poorly in situations when you become activated by people,
right.
Basically ourselves. You know.
Well, it's because I don't go to enough meetings. That's what it is. I went to a meeting this morning, and I shared that because I only go to like one meeting a week, and I shared that like I see it as kind of like a circus tent, and there's only one pole, so the tent is falling on me on both sides. But if I put another
this is life or your garden or AA?
It's my recovery. That I only have one tent pole up. So the fucking, the ism is falling on my head all over the place, except under the pole. You understand?
No, I completely understand. And I think it's strange though too, because I think we had this discussion kind of just like, you know, off the air, which I said that, you know, I have a little trouble when I want the ambition for the newsletter is probably higher than I'd like it to be. Because I don't want my recovery newsletter to become part of my recovery, right? You know, I don't think that this should be service in any way, shape, or form. Even though people like, you know, say nice things and say, "Oh, you're helping people out," for that. I don't want to fucking help people. I don't know. I know nothing, right? You know, I think I have to kind of just like stay exactly there in order for this stuff to actually work. You know, as much as I basically just like, you know, really love saying smart things to people and people feel like, you know, they've gotten something from it, that's great. But I'm also very, very, very self-conscious about that fact because I'm afraid it's going to start to kind of, you know, be detrimental to my recovery.
No, I hear you. I understand what you mean. I always feel like when people say that Dopey helps people, I say that's just like a weird side effect of it. You know, as long
I think that's the right attitude to have.
You know, I think as long as the show is entertaining, somebody will get something out of it. But I am not equipped to really help anybody, except myself.
No,
I was talking to my friend. My friend said to me, Dave, you know, one of my best friends, one of my oldest friends, who's like kind of like a God guy, like he goes to church and stuff. And he said, and he's one of my only friends that's not Jewish. And he said, that's not true, but one of my oldest best friends that's not Jewish. There's not that many of my very old friends that aren't Jewish. And he said to me, he said, "You're doing God's work." And I said, "Not really." I said, "I'm doing what I always wanted to do, and it just happens to be helping people because they like it." And he said, "Well, that's why it's actually God's work, because you get something out of it too." I don't know. He said something. It was smart.
I mean, but like, how much recovery do you actually get out of doing this project? I mean, do you have stuff that kind of surprises you and helps you along the way, or is just the act of doing it you consider just like as part of your service?
I don't think of it as service at all.
Okay.
I don't think of it. I mean, I don't think of any of it as service, but I do respond to every person. If I didn't respond to you and I say this, I'm sorry, but I respond to everybody that I get. I try to respond to everybody. I care when an addict in recovery or an addict who's struggling reaches out, I respond. And I don't think of it as service, but I do think of it as doing what I'm supposed to be doing, you know, looking out. And I think that's a really great thing to be able to do. And it's also what Chris used to always say about Dopey was that it was built into his 12th step, which was carrying the message, which, whatever. I like to be able to respond to people. I like that people hear that I pretty much enjoy my life and I'm sober and I was a terrible heroin addict, and maybe they'll enjoy their life if they get sober, or at least they definitely won't overdose on heroin. I don't think of any of it as service. I love making the show because I love making a show. I love being down to the wire. I love that this show is going to come out in 2 days and I don't have anything. All I have is this conversation so far, and I have something else lined up. I like that feeling.
I know it's a snooze, but I mean, I think that's where we are very, very much the same, because I feel the same way about my little project, right? Where it's basically kind of just like, I would almost do it even if I wasn't in recovery. It would probably be about something else, obviously. But, this just feels like a good use of all that I've learned so far in recovery, right? I mean, I think that's a fair thing to say.
Well, I think for both of us, it's something that, like, I don't know how this would have been made if it wasn't Dopey. I know that I always wanted to do something like this, and the fact that it's around addiction and recovery is like, it's cool, and it's kind of spooky, and it's kind of like, it's kind of like a beautiful thing. But I would be doing it also. I would want to be doing it. But if I wasn't in recovery, I wouldn't be putting anything out every week. That's the other piece.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I mean, that's the flip side of that too, where it's like ultimately, like, I have to remember that the only reason I'm even getting the chance to do this again is because I've chosen this new path, right? I mean, that's the part that.
I'm sorry. You could finish what you're saying.
Go ahead.
When did you get clean?
It'll be 3 years in July 15th of this year, which will be like 3 years back, I would say, because I reset my day count. I started in earnest to try to get, clean and sober in like August of 2015. But it didn't take until about July of 2016. Well, I'm sorry. About that time.
One of my favorite things to ask people was, what was the last time you got high? Like, do you remember it?
Right.
What was the last time you got high?
Like decent high, like basically just like the stuff that's like problematic,
What's the last time you used anything? What was it?
Probably 3, 4. I want to say about April of 2015. I started kind of dipping back into my parents' pills. Like, even though I didn't know they were taking, I didn't know for whatever reason they were prescribed Ativan, and they've never had Ativan in their life. So I thought it was one of those moments where it was like, clearly this Ativan is there for me.
It was a God moment.
This is. Yeah, exactly. So I took like 4 or 5 of them and just like rolled around on the couch and felt cottony for a little while. But it didn't really kind of just like spiral into anything too severe, but it did remind me that I missed it.
Right. I remember when I first took Ativan. The first time I took Ativan was when it was the first night that I was with my wife or my girlfriend or whatever you want to call her, the mother of my children. And we did a bunch of coke, and we went back to her apartment, and she had Ativan, and it was like, I really liked Ativan. I didn't realize how, I just think it was a great benzo for me. I thought it was powerful, and I just, I thought my, Linda was incredibly beautiful, and I loved being with her, and I was super attracted to her, but I also wanted to keep going back to her house for the Ativan,
Yeah, I mean that's like it's one of those things where it's just like you start to kind of like at towards the end. I mean, and this is what kind of drug me into recovery. I mean, I'll send you a picture of like my coffee table that I was like working off of, like quote unquote like working, because I had a startup like situation with my own news site for a little while. That was my last job before everything went to shit with the trial and all that stuff. But I mean, it was called Ratter. And I would, the coffee table, it's like this beautiful tableau of a drug addict, right? I mean, it was just like, ultimately just like, I had like my laptop closed, but I had like, suspicious pill bottle here, smashed up there, dirty keys, full ashtray, like, a half-drank bottle of Modelo for some reason, then like, a weird kind of Prosecco bottle on the left-hand side. And then the thing that was like I found most bothersome about the photo was there was a picture of just like a Pringles can when the flavor was kind of just like Buffalo Wild Wings Pringles. And, that part actually just like I remember kind of just like going down to the like, the janky deli like in Williamsburg and picking that particular flavor of Pringles out because I thought it would give me enough protein for the day.
That's
right?
funny.
Because, it's just like I was so strung out at that point. It's basically just like, just doing like the friggin', the bend. I called it like my up and sideways phase, where it's basically just like, whatever I was doing to do up, either it was like, blow or amphetamines, and then, I'd have the benzos to cut it, and then, just so I could walk cockeyed. But I mean, that was that. I couldn't even tell you how long that went on for. I mean, I was just like so drowning in that for a little while.
Well, the amazing thing to me with your story was that, like, I mean, you were basically like in the center of the universe, with a habit growing, like you were part of this, internationally infamous and like at the same time, like mercurial and incredibly popular blog, which was Gawker. And you became in charge of it. And while you were in charge of it, you were basically a train wreck.
Yeah, I mean, by the time I was at Gawker, I think it really did take that. It took the turn, right? Where it's basically just like you go from kind of functional and charming to just kind of dirty. Like, I mean, I always say it as like a boss. I was basically kind of like Michael Scott who didn't shower. Like, I mean, that was kind of just like what I was like to deal with at Gawker.
I don't know anything about this Michael Scott, but I did see
he's from The Office. He's from The Office.
Yeah, I never watched The Office. That's one of my downsides. I know.
Christ. This is like the second time we've had something like this go south. Well, anyway,
that's funny.
I hope poor people who have basically read, who may have watched The Office are laughing their ass off right now.
Well, something that Chris he was always bothered that I didn't watch The Office, but what was it?
Do you watch? I think you're one of those guys that doesn't watch anything.
Dude, I watch everything I can, and then name something else. Let's see if I watch it.
The Wire.
Oh, I know it inside and out. Are you kidding me? You obviously don't listen to Dopey if you've never heard me talk about The Wire. Are you kidding me? In fact, I was at a store the other day. And I was buying I was at Target, okay? And I was trying to buy like a cleaner to clean the floor in my house, okay? And I'm in Target and I'm in the aisle in Target. And this dude who works there comes up to me and he's like, "What are you looking for?" And I'm like, "I need a cleaner for my floor. I don't know what to get." And he's like, "Well, what I use for my floor is the Swiffer Wet Jet," okay? And he walks me to the Swiffer aisle, okay? And his eyes are fucking pinned as shit. And he starts describing the benefits of the Swiffer Wet Jet and the Swiffer vacuum. And he takes me through his whole house and how he only uses the Swiffer Wet Jet and the Swiffer vacuum. And at the end of it, I buy both of them. Okay, I buy the fucking Swiffer wood chemical, and as I'm leaving, all I could think about is The Wire when Snoop goes to buy the fucking nail gun, and the dude at Home Depot sells her the nail gun, and she tips him $200, and he's like, "Yo, that was He's like, "That's $200 extra," and Snoop's like, "You sold that shit like a motherfucker," and the dude at Target sold me the Swiffer shit like a motherfucker. He was just this amazing salesman. Back to Gawker, which is way more important than what I watch on TV.
Yeah. What's funny too? I was basically just like going to end that and say just like, and I've never watched The Wire. So I had no idea what you were talking about.
You've never watched The Wire?
Yeah, right back at you. No, I did, but I mean, I thought that would be great for this little thing, this little tangent we went on.
But do you remember when Snoop says you sold that shit like a motherfucker?
Yeah,
Okay.
No, she used to live in my neighborhood, actually, like when I was living in Williamsburg. I used to see her all the time.
Snoop Pearson. She had a little issue.
Yeah, she did.
But back to this thing. I saw this roast, and I think it was before you were at Gawker, and you were the boss at Deadspin, and you were the boss.
No, it wasn't. I wasn't yet. This was like in 2007. This was like basically when I was moving back to Philadelphia. So I mean, I was like wasn't even on Gawker's radar at that point.
It was pre all that. It was okay. So one of the women in the thing says that you urinated on her computer on a Tuesday night.
Yes. Yeah.
So
that's true.
How did that happen?
It's weird. How did it happen? I never really kind of gotten into the physics of it, but here's what I remember of that night. It was just like kind of like one of those 30 beer nights, right? Where it was like I thought you can just drink and then everything just seems like, oh, I can just drink as much as I can, right? I don't think I would consider myself even like a full-blown alcoholic at that point, but I thought I was just having a great night out. And it was weird because I came home and I talked to my roommate and everything seemed fine, and then I fell asleep. I used to fall asleep on the couch all the time watching television because that was the only way I would wind down.
Right.
But I remember it was like he was sleeping on the couch. I remember her laptop was up and open. We had like kind of like a higher coffee table. And I remember just like in the middle of the night having to piss and then not really wanting to get up, but then also realizing that it had started to kind of just like, come out of me.
Right.
So I think I just like, opened my fly and then just like kind of tilted over to the side and then just completely just like drowned her computer. And I got the computer and I got the cable remote. So, I mean, it was like kind of just like, I remember she was so pissed about the computer and then she tried to turn on the television. I'm like, wait, before you do that,
She lived with you, that woman?
But it was awful. And then I had to go and get the, I sent it to like one of those computer doctor places. And I told them that, a cat had pissed on it.
Wow.
And then I remember he called me back and he was just like, and I opened it up and there was all this liquid. He's like, how big was this cat? And I'm like, it was a Jaguar, what I mean? But,
like about 175 pounds.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, it was just, and like that was like, pre when things got really out of control. That was just kind of like, the beginning part where it's just like I had the capacity to do that sort of shit.
Well, walk me through when, using became like a problem. And like, what was it like, and what were you doing, and what was the experience like, and also because the stakes were getting high, you know what I mean? You were the center of this maelstrom. Like millions of people were reading that blog. I mean, allegedly. I mean, who knows? A lot of them were probably robots, but I mean, it was a popular site. That's for sure. But I mean, like I think it's just, and I can tell this is kind of just like a recovered person in a different way than I would as using. So I'm talking to you like a person who's in recovery, not as a person who basically just like, knows me from that site. But, what I can tell you is just like, it was my dream job and I hated it because I hated myself so much, if that makes sense. Why did you hate yourself so much?
I thought it was everything that I ever wanted, right? Which is basically kind of just like this creative autonomy that, being at Gawker Media did provide. Whereas ultimately just like, you could write something either kind of just like funny or wry or like, ultimately kind of just scandalous, and it would gain a lot of attention. And then it would also just like, as a person trying to kind of just like make a career in writing of some sort, it would give you a lot of attention and give you a lot of professional options. And, I began to kind of just do that very well and very frequently. But the degree to which I was basically trying to kind of do things to kind of one-up myself, you started to kind of eat away at me a little bit. Like,
right.
The stories about kind of just like, the stories where I was basically just like being accused of ruining someone's life did actually bother me. And it was just like, it started to kind of just like, add up. And I began to kind of think, like, how long am I actually doing this, and why am I doing this?
Well,
right?
what was the first story?
And,
AJ, what was the first story where you felt like where you were actually like that narrative was being said, where they said that you were ruining somebody's life, or you had a twinge of feeling like this might not be a good thing? There was a I mean, if you watch like ESPN and all, like sports in an 8-way capacity, or you're like one of those weirdos too. No, I watch a little bit. You know what I mean? I'm in and out.
Right,
I'm a basketball fan, but I read sports news here and there.
Yeah, all right. So anyway, there was this ESPN commentator named Sean Salisbury, who used to work as like an NFL talking head. He was an ex-quarterback. He had gotten into just like a scandal where he had like sent pictures of his dick, allegedly. Well, not allegedly, he admitted to it, to kind of just like, a lot of people whom he worked with. It was a ha-ha funny joke. They told HR about it, et cetera, et cetera. He denied it. We had run the story accusing him of that. He denied it once again, but he eventually got fired for it, right? And he was kind of just like, suggesting that our site was the cause of this. And he began to kind of just like email me, clearly under duress, like constantly, like from his iPhone. And it was one of those kind of just like iPhone email drunken rants, where every single email would come like fast and furious at like, every 3 minutes, and then said, sent for my iPhone.
Right.
And he was clearly just like, losing it. And I remember like, there were people laughing, and I kept putting up the email after email. And I started to get other emails from like other people in the industry who were just like, maybe back off. Maybe this guy is in crisis. Maybe you're going too far here. And then I remember just like, whatever that line was, I no longer kind of just, it's not that I didn't care. I was just very, very cognizant that I was crossing it, and that was probably what was going to separate me and make me good at this or different at this than other people.
Like you were willing to do stuff that other people weren't willing to do.
That I was willing to I was able to compartmentalize like some human kind of empathy and still do this. Now, I mean, granted, like, there's another side to it where you can say just like, yeah, well, this was a public moment for a public figure. And, those are the breaks. But, I just felt that twinge that you were talking about at that point. And then I remember also kind of just like, the net result of it was ultimately like, okay, I guess this is good for the site. Right? And, I began to kind of just like, that was really just like what my editorial leadership was ultimately trying to make, taking those stories on, like not letting anyone else kind of just like on the staff do them, because I didn't want anybody else to basically kind of be branded with the same sort of thing that I was. But I knew it was good. I knew it was good that we had an asshole on the staff that probably made other people nervous.
And that you were willing to go to places that other people weren't willing to go.
Yeah.
And you did that over and over again to incredible success. I mean, and in some ways, you know what I mean? Like incredible readership, incredible numbers.
It was. There were GQ profiles written about me. I mean, like there was like an HBO Real Sports thing. I mean, it was clearly working in some sort of professional capacity, even if it was always kind of just like, those stories were always buffered with basically just like, oh, here's the success, but is this actually ethical, or is this man ruining lives?
Right.
Are we kind of just like, witnessing like, deprivation in action here? And I think that's, that was really kind of just like, what was actually happening at the time. There was no question about it.
And the backstory is your addiction is starting to like become, really like manifested, and it's really starting to stick its head up. And like, as you're doing, morally questionable stuff, your intake of these drugs is on the up. And I think you're hard pressed to find a fucking drug addict who made good decisions when they used more drugs. And you had
and I think that's right, and I think that but I and this is just like the funny part about kind of just like being wired the way I am. Like I still look back at that time and say just like it wasn't that bad. I remember just like, kind of not doing a lot of more stuff. I remember kind of, abstaining at some points, or basically kind of just, not running some stories. And I also just like, thought that it was like, well, if I was that bad a drug addict, why didn't anybody put me in rehab, right? I mean,
well, you were like their pet dog. You were like frothing at the mouth. You were willing to bite people, and they were like, we have this crazy fucking dog who's going to fucking get attention. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't think you could say we, because it was basically just like my one boss, right?
It's a royal we.
And I don't want to like pin it on him, but I mean, it was just like it was clearly a guy. I mean, I was doing something. I was doing the job in a way that I thought he would approve of. Put it that way.
Well, he did approve of it. He approved of it. He gave you a raise. He promoted you. He put you in charge of everything because you were willing to do stuff that nobody else was willing to do, and it got him the attention that gave him the clicks or whatever, right?
I don't know if it was the clicks.
Well, I don't know about that.
The attention. It's just like, and I understand that it's just like that's part of kind of just like, the mythology of just like the internet, that it was like some sort of boiler room for like, page views. But like the reality was, I mean, there are just, for me, it was more about, I think the attention getting and the potential to kind of just like, build my own ladder, like to wherever that was really what appealed to me. And Gawker kind of gave that sort of platform. And, Nick was the guy that was obviously in charge. So if he was approving of, everything that I was doing, then in my mind, I was doing everything right.
Right. And it was kind of a ladder of dick pics for a little while, right? There was a lot.
That's definitely true. Yeah.
There was Brett Favre's dick pic.
I mean, there weren't a lot. I mean, I would say not even, less than 10.
Well, it's a very short ladder where every rung was a dick pic. I mean, that's like some kind of like...
I mean, there was only really one big dick pic that wasn't even really a dick pic per se. I mean, it just became... I became kind of synonymous with that. But I mean, in reality, I mean, there may have been like 3.
And that was the Brett Favre dick pic.
The Brett Favre one, yes. Yeah. And for those who don't know, I mean, it was just like this was around. It was about the time that he was playing with the Jets, and he had, according to the source of the story, who was a woman named Jen Sturger, he used to work for the Jets. She had received kind of just like some unwanted advances from him on several occasions. She had the voicemail messages of him kind of just like soliciting her. And then, she said that she had also received some photos of an unidentified member that she had kind of presumed was from him just because of all the other calls that she was getting. So, I ran with that story, and then ultimately it became kind of just like, was it his dick or was it not his dick? And the NFL investigated it, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a very, long and drawn out story that made national news, and I was the guy who brought it to that level.
Well, and as all this was happening, and you're sort of like your fame was rising, was your intake rising at the same time? Was your using like increasing?
I don't know. Not really. I mean, it was high. Don't get me wrong, but I think I would honestly consider myself more of just like a party person at that point, right? And
what was the party like?
Well, I mean, I would definitely be a guy who, worked halfway hard 3 days a week and like, Thursday or Friday or maybe, Monday, I mean, it would not be available.
Right.
So, I mean, that was really kind of just like, what it was like for me. And I mean, it was kind of accepted. Like, here was also just like the logic that I applied. If I was very, very public with my love of drugs and alcohol and kind of just like, like uninhibited by it, then nobody could really say that I had a problem, right? Because I wasn't hiding it. Like,
but also, but a 3 day on, 4 day off week sounds pretty manageable to me. Like, what was it? And I just want to jump to it because, like, what was it that made you need recovery? Like, what changed?
I mean, for me, it really started to change when I was. It became more and more like I had like 3 years where, honest to God, I probably only worked on Wednesday for like 4 hours, and Elise was like lucid for that amount
So
of
it
time.
changed. The 3 day on, 4 day off thing
changed.
Yeah.
I mean, it changed to the point where it's just like, I'm not going to say it became like an everyday thing, but it became a think about it every day thing, and it also became kind of just like, probably a half of the month type of thing, to where I was basically kind of just like, increasing my intake, and I was not absolutely kind of straightening out as quickly as I used to, and I needed more to kind of just like find that kind of just stabilizing ground.
Well, let me ask you this: how much did the Hulk Hogan thing like force your bottom?
It didn't at all. Like, I mean, the thing about, the trial kind of ran up exactly like parallel to my recovery. But the thing was, there was no actual trial at that point. Like, the trial was still like something that I think most of the legal experts, most of our legal team,
Well, talk about what happened before you get into the trial, because I didn't say it.
I mean, yeah. Well, all right, fine. So when I after Deadspin, I got promoted to editor-in-chief of Gawker, and one of the stories that I did at Gawker was essentially just like ran this a legally filmed tape of Hulk Hogan having sex with his best friend's wife. About 1 minute and 30 seconds of a half-hour footage. I ran, quote unquote, a highlight reel of it. And then I wrote what I thought was a very amusing and funny and kind of poignant story about, like, the state of America and its celebrity sex tapes. And I got sued for $115 million along with my boss in Gawker Media. And we went to trial in Florida around, March of 2016, I want to say. No, about 2015. And we lost badly.
But wasn't that the end of that was the end of Gawker, basically, right?
Yeah, it took a few more months, but that was, yeah.
So it took Gawker down, and it also put you in the public eye in a much bigger way than you had been before.
Yes and no. I mean, I can't really speak to that, like, with any sort of like clarity just yet, because it was happening all during early recovery for me. I mean, we're talking like months into my recovery, and not really good recovery at that point. I consider myself pretty dry from the beginning of the trial until like about the year and a half it took afterwards for that thing to get all sorted out.
But why did that even happen? That you had stopped using. When you stopped using, like, what was your bottom then, if it wasn't related to the Hulkster?
It wasn't related. It was.
I'm saying
this. Just waking up and without shoes and walking around streets. I mean, I remember it being like a 105-degree day in like Brooklyn, and I was like wearing 2 cardigans, and I was just kind of at the end of my rope as much as I possibly could be, and like at that point, it just like it didn't dawn on me that my drinking and using was becoming a problem, and I became very, very kind of just like secretive about it. All the signs started happening, right? I mean, it's just like the things that the little by little things, like the losses were starting to add up.
Right. And you don't remember do you remember a defining moment where you were like, this has to change? I need to get out of this.
Yeah. I mean, it was about that time when I told you about like the coffee table, and then like there was a friend of mine who, it just, let's call them guys just like, guys that kind of just like, went rock bottoming with. I mean, like, it was like a Saturday, we got up at 10, we went into the city, just like, drank and played pool and did pills and just like ordered Coke and shrooms and just like, it was just like by 2:00, I mean, we're just like kind of floating, right? But like, floating, but full of booze at the same time.
Right.
And then also kind of just like head full of pills, etc. And then it was just like throughout the day, I mean, we began to kind of just like, pick up other people along our travels and jumping from bar to bar. And then, at the time I was actually just like, playing a lot of CeeLo, like the dice game. And I remember kind of just like, in the middle of this dice game, kind of just like, and I didn't have a lot of money at that point. I mean, I had kind of just like a startup and, all of my money that was, that I was supposed to live off of. But I had the business card, and I was very proud of when I got that business card because it had my own, corporation on it. It had my full name, and it was black, and it seemed kind of heavy.
Right.
And I remember like thinking that was like a moment that I had made it. And I'm playing CeeLo, and I keep losing, and I ran out of cash, and I put up the card against like a random guy. And I remember just like there was a woman who was playing, who was just like watching this whole thing go down, a woman I don't know, and she reached over and she said, "You have to stop." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because you keep losing." And it was almost just like that kind of just like that moment where everything kind of froze, and I was just like, "Oh, that's echoing in my head." Right. And it was like, eventually I lost the card. The guy who, won it was basically very kind and only went and like spent like $23 at McDonald's, but then returned it to me eventually. But that was the moment where I was just like, I don't know why. I had a lot of stuff that I was supposed to do that weekend and that week for myself and for my company and for my career, things that I wanted to do. And I chose not to, right? I chose to kind of gamble and get kind of just like completely loaded. And that was the point where I was basically just like, man, I didn't want that decision to happen.
Right. So it was obvious to you. It was obvious to you in that moment that things had gotten out of hand.
It wasn't obvious. It wasn't obvious. I really wanted to basically just like, and this is how deranged I was at the time. I really wanted to hire a medic on site at this bar that I was at to administer B12 shots. Right. That was my big plan at the time. I was just like, just so I can kind of just like, bounce back quickly and not have this sort of thing happen again.
Well, that was did you ever watch the Mad Men when there was like 1971?
I absolutely did.
Did you ever have it like that at Gawker or Ratter?
I did.
You did. So tell me about that. You had somebody fixing you up with amphetamines and B12 together?
No. I mean, like what? I mean, I jumped in a little too early, but I mean, like when I was in Vegas one time for my friend's wedding, and like at the time I was doing a lot of Dexedrine, right? And I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Sure.
It's like super Adderall, basically, right? So doing that a lot, and then the night before the wedding, or like the night of the wedding, we basically just like done like a whole bunch of coke, more coke than when you have like that line where you're basically just like, okay, I can't do any more coke.
Yeah.
Right? My heart is tight, my throat is tight.
Yeah.
My nose is basically just like not functioning anymore. I mean, everything is kind of just like dry, and I still will not be able to sleep for 20 days. But I took the one more line. I was up. Like, it was kind of just like, clearly I'm going to kind of just like hit cardiac arrest like right away. So, I went and had someone take me to kind of just like it's not actually just like, a hospital, but it's like a little kind of just like mini hospital. What is it called?
Like the walk-in, the Stat Health Clinic, whatever it's called. Yeah.
Yeah. So I walk because I make somebody walk me there because I was just like, I don't want to die in this hotel during my friend's wedding. I don't want to ruin my friend's wedding. That's what I was thinking. So just walk me to, like, you know, the hospital. We'll get this taken care of. And, you know, it was like a Vegas clinic. So the doctor that was there is basically just like, I've clearly seen this a couple of times, and administered me like a B12 shot on the spot. And it was like nothing ever happened.
Really?
It was amazing. Yes.
Just replenishing
just like back
everything.
to normal.
That's a drug.
Yeah.
I never did PCP, and I never had a B12 shot. Whenever I got to that place of too much coke, like, I refused to do coke if I didn't have heroin or pills or both, because I fucking hated the coke without the down. In fact, I just did coke as an excuse to do more downs all the time, because I'm just very naturally wired.
That's the way to do it. But I mean, that was the part that was just like, it started to get really scary then, because I mean, it was ultimately just like, you know, you're up all night doing coke, and then I always had that moment with benzos, and I remember, like, you know, taking them and getting that kind of just like that dull throbbing feeling of basically kind of just like, oh, my breath is slow, but my heart is fast. Which one is this? Which way is this going to go? And then kind of just like actually just like giving myself like last rites before I fall asleep, because it was basically just like, oh, this is how it happens. These are the times where you just don't wake up, but not really caring, right? You know, I'm just knowing that was kind of just like those sort of moments were happening more and more frequently. Right. And I was just like, you know, well, that's kind of just like the price of kind of just like living the life that I was living. Right. That's the price of success.
I love that feeling of going from fast to very slow. Like, that was a feeling that, because like when the slow drugs would hit me, that was I haven't thought about that in a long time, how much I enjoyed slowing down and like how the chemistry all played out. What's interesting to me, and I don't mean to, you know, obviously I'm not trying to glorify drugs. It's just like, it's just hearing you talk about it and hearing, like, just remembering that chemical interaction. It's just, I forgot about it kind of. And I hated coke.
Well, because I mean, that's the thing that I like. A lot of the stuff when I miss things, like, here's actually what, like, if I had a day, right? If I could just like pick a day to kind of just like take a furlough, like, you know, I wouldn't kind of just like go to a bar or anything like that. You know, I would probably just like take a couple pills, have some like kind of just like cough medicine and a straw and a bunch of cigarettes, and just like sit in bed for as long as I wanted. Right. Like, I love that, basically kind of just like that warm blanket of kind of just like almost feeling like you're allowed to kind of just sit here and do nothing because your body can't. Right?
Totally.
You know?
I mean, I would have a bong, some weed, a record player, a pack of cigarettes, and then maybe some Xanax and maybe some heroin and The Wire, maybe, and some chocolate chip ice cream. I think that sounds like a good deathbed scenario. I have another question though, because like whenever I've brought up the Hulkster, and I love to call Hulk Hogan the Hulkster, because when I was a kid, I would watch wrestling. I was never a Hulk Hogan fan, but like when this whole thing happened, there was a part of me, like a little piece of me had a little guilty laugh that this was happening to the Hulkster. You know, Mr. Say Your Prayers, Eat Your Vitamins guy. But then when he sort of turned up in court, I felt sorry for him, you know. Because he did, I mean, like, his whole family was falling apart and his career was in trouble. And, you know, like, he's bounced back, obviously. But why don't you like to talk about it? Because, I mean, like, you know, I've been reading there's Netflix stories coming out about you, like a series, like 3 different Netflix series are coming out. And whenever I bring up the Hulkster, you kind of give me this weird laugh and you don't want to talk about it. But it seems like such a profound story. Like, what keeps you from wanting to talk about it?
Well, because I'm still actively working through it, and I just, like, you know, it's a lot of the stuff is like, I don't want to. Some parts of it still make me kind of volcanically angry.
Well,
right?
Like what?
I mean, just the fact that, here's the thing. I think it was karmically just, but I think it was legally just like abysmal. You know, I mean, ultimately at the end, when all the smoke cleared, it was a guy with a lot of money who really wanted that site like,
Gone.
eradicated, right? Yeah. So I mean, and that's really the stuff that I think is probably the most frustrating in terms of just like, kind of everyone weighing exactly just like, how well did Gawker or myself, did we actually deserve it, right? Are we worthy martyrs? And I don't think that that's like a proper question. I think the proper question is, do you really want billionaires who are kind of just like a little bit emotionally unstable actually have the power to do this? And that's the thing that I find is the thing that most people should kind of focus on.
What was that movie? What was that movie called? The Netflix documentary?
I actually can't remember the name. I'm not trying to be an asshole.
Something about truth or something. I'm Googling it and it's not coming up. But it's a good movie and it tells the story. It tells the story well.
I don't know, but I mean, that's the thing. It's just like, I feel like such a character in that story, and I'm not, right? I mean, I was a guy in early recovery with all this weirdo shit happening. It felt like a Black Mirror episode to me. So it's still tough to kind of, really look at with any sort of clarity or have any sort of kind of just like, oh, here's what happened. This is what happened. Because a lot of the stuff, I'm still not 100% on why things happened the way they did.
Right. And like, I understand what you're saying. And I think that's fine. And I think we
do
can
you?
I do. I think we could leave it there because also you don't. I mean, it sounds like
I don't want to be cagey about it. I mean, I would love to talk about this from a recovery perspective because I mean, it's just like there's a lot of stuff that ultimately, like when I'm in that courtroom, like for example, like I absolutely began to kind of just like it dawned on me of just like why this would hurt Hulk Hogan because I mean, in the middle of the trial, I'm obviously new in recovery, and I don't want any eyes on me whatsoever. It's feeling like I'm like the worst, most vile human on the planet. And I remember thinking just like, maybe that's how he was feeling when the tape came out, right?
Right.
That vulnerable and that basically just like trying to do the right thing and be responsible for once. And then like his past comes roaring back and is kind of just like on full display and he's starting to pay for it, right? I remember having that thought like in the courtroom where it's just like, oh, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and not to mention, like, that dude was struggling at that time. His family and shit. Like, and you could just...
I don't know. Who knows? But, I mean, here's the thing. It's just like, once it kind of just, like, gets... When lawyers and judges get control of
a narrative,
story,
right.
A narrative...
Right.
It's like it's facts stacked on top of facts, but maybe very little truth. Like... And that's kind of just like the thing that I really learned when it was like trying to be, practice some rigorous honesty. It's very tough to do that in an American courtroom, right?
Yeah. Well, you lost the suit. So, I mean, You weren't supposed to owe Hulk Hogan $150 million, though, were you?
Well, at one point, because of the way that the Florida legal system is structured, like all three parties are liable for that amount. Unbeknownst to me, my former employer and my former boss went ahead and declared bankruptcy, so they were basically protected. I was told I shouldn't declare bankruptcy because, I mean, my assets were minimal, and it was just like, oh, well, they probably won't, go after you because you're a pauper, basically. And that wasn't the case. At one point, I woke up and my checking account was negative $230 million.
That's amazing. Did you take a picture?
I did take a picture. Yeah, I will send it to you. You can, use that, and you can put the Dopey sticker in front of it. But the thing was, it was funny because I mean they doubled it because it was basically kind of like insurance, like on the part of Chase. But then I remember getting this very, very kind of just like perfunctory email from them, and them saying just like, as a valued Chase customer, we're going to waive the $15 processing fee.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but I mean, it was just like it was so absurd because I mean, it's just like that amount of negative money in your account. It's like winning the reverse lottery. I mean, I clearly will never be able to pay it back So you're kind of just like forced to walk the earth and kind of live off the land, basically.
Yeah, well, that's total, like, in a weird way, it's total freedom. But how did you walk away from negative $230 million? Like, what happened?
I mean, they eventually just worked it out, and, you know, it was kind of just, like, done as, like, a bully tactic on their point. I mean, they were trying to kind of use me as a pawn to get to whatever money they could, and really kind of just, like, I mean, ultimately, it's just, like, that's what a billionaire's open checkbook can do,
right?
Is that lawyers can do whatever the fuck they want to.
Did they ever ever get your money though?
What they did was I had a lien. I had that lien on my checking account for about a year, where it was just like inactive. Luckily, there was just like bogged down in legal paperwork that they were trying to kind of any money I could have been earning at that point. Would have been subject to, like, they would be able to kind of just, like, you know, take it from me if it was in a formal paycheck. So they were keeping track of, you know, where I was going to be working, was I getting any book deal offers, all this kind of stuff. I mean, it was kind of just harassment for about a year. They kept taking my phone and kind of just, like, you know, clearing it to make sure I wasn't doing anything. My computers, I mean, it just went on for a long period of time. It was kind of just like this weird exile. And I had to just, like, wait it out while kind of just, like, you know, lawyers who were basically just, like, you know, after bigger things than me, figured out some way to kind of just, like, you know, get Hulk Hogan as a massive amount of money.
Right. And they left you alone. You didn't have to fucking fork anything over.
I didn't have to fork anything over, but, I mean, it was kind of like, I don't know if who knows? I know there are loose ends.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's just like, I hope to God, like, you know, nothing happened. Because, I mean, he's still suing other people over this. So, I mean, you know, this could come up again, and they could just, like, decide that, oh, well, you know, he's clearly just, like, you know, just a millionaire because of the small bow. Let's go after him for that.
Well, that might be why you didn't call it the large bow, because maybe they'll know that it's small. They're not going to, like... No, you don't like that joke?
No, I mean, it was just like I was trying to keep right-sized.
Right.
But, yeah, but I mean, like, the thing is, I don't know. I saw enough firsthand to see just, like, you know, people kind of just, like, making decisions without caring for my well-being. Right? And I don't mean that to be just self-pitying. I mean, it was just, like, that was kind of just, like, the stuff that was actually happening at the time.
Well, you were out there. You were the man out there, and they let you stay out there. You know what I'm saying? They did not bring you in, and they did not take care of you. Did you ever wind up talking to him? The Hulkster? Never a word. Or did you talk to him?
No, I didn't talk to him. You know, I mean, it was just like, I mean, without saying, like, too much, I will say that it was basically just like, you know, there's a part of me that will someday hopefully make an amends to him in the way that we're supposed to make an amends to people.
Yeah, what do we think that would look like, an amends to Hulk Hogan?
I don't know what that would look like. I don't know what that would look like, but I mean, it's just like, it's absolutely something that, you know, I can make. I don't think I can make in any sort of formal way at this point, just because it's legally fraught. But
I think it should be a formal. It should be a formal conference call on Dopey, because that would just be mind-boggling great for the show. So let's try to.
Now you're Howard Stern kind of just like mindset's coming out clearly, but
that would be so fun. I mean, no, listen, I only want good things for you. I want peace for you. I want peace around all this shit, because obviously you're moving forward in a really positive way, and that's what counts.
I'm trying to. Thank you. But I mean, I think that that's like the part about this where it's just like, and even for my own curiosity's sake, you know. It's like, you know, which part of, like, was Hulk Hogan trying to basically save his personal life, or was he trying to save
his professional life? Right.
Hulk Hogan's life. Yeah, right. You know, because that's the part that I'm curious about. That's a question that I would love to ask him someday.
Well, maybe you can. I mean, like, I think it has to do with being a wrestler and getting old, and then having this thing come out. So everything is... He can't jump in the ring and fucking do the big leg drop and like, come out of this as Hulk Hogan. He's an old man.
You know, what was... But here's the thing. It's just like, you know, because, you know, seeing him, you know, being like 20 feet across from him in the courtroom, and even though he was kind of just like limping around on a cane and, He's wearing his do-rag still. He made a special request to the judge to wear his do-rag. Nobody saw him as a guy who was humiliated, or here's the guy from the sex tape. Everybody who sees Hulk Hogan thinks it's Hulk Hogan. Look, there's Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
Nobody is basically just like angry to be in the presence of Hulk Hogan. So I mean, it was strange to kind of just like sit there and say just like I don't know exactly how professionally this affected him, but personally, that's something for him to basically just like square himself with. If he was hurt by it, I get that, I understand that. I think that is something that I'm trying to basically just like move forward with into my life. But the fact that I actually just like had the capability of doing that to people, but I mean, it's also up to him to kind of just like figure out how honest that whole entire lawsuit was. That's really it.
Right. And but more importantly, I think than all of that is like you got to like dip yourself to the kind of lowest common denominator of journalism. You got to like, you went to the darkest place and now you're trying to do something that isn't like that.
Well, it's weird because it's like, the small bow exists in the same way. Like it wasn't all that stuff. Like there are probably like the 8 or 10 things that I'm maybe kind of just like, known for, right? Or at least kind of in some way, or where I used to work. I mean, there were still elements of the stuff that I'm doing for the small bow that existed there. Like it's not a complete 180 at all. It's just I'm not doing all of the crazy stuff. That the kind of the way. I mean, I'm still kind of just like running a newsletter or a website in a way that I think it should be done.
So can we look forward to like? Can we look forward to like the best cocks of recovery, like a little Robert Downey Jr. sex tape on the small bow or anything like that? Russell Brand's dick someplace? No? Hello? Are you still there?
Well, I'm just
No dicks are coming to the small bow is the point. I'm just making a stupid joke. Can't I make a stupid joke? Can I enjoy myself for a second? Come on. Did I ruin this for you?
Kind of did. I was looking forward to this interview.
And now an hour and 10 minutes, it's not so good. I can take that out. You want me to hold on? Hold on. I'll take it out.
No, I don't need that. You can leave it in there. If you put in a laugh track.
No, I can't put in a laugh track.
You can keep it in if you put in a laugh track.
All right. Well,
you can keep it. You can keep it in if you keep in my suggestion of putting in a laugh track.
Everywhere or just there?
No, just there.
I'll do it. But
all right, man. Thank you.
And no, thank you for coming on, and I appreciate everything. Because you are very helpful with my mission, and I appreciate your interest in it, and I appreciate what you do, man. And I think that we should have a the grass is always greener gardening section in Small Bow. If you want it, I'm down to write it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do have something in mind that I'd like you to do, but we can talk about that later. But I do hope you have me back because this is always fun.
No, I need to have you come back because we didn't talk about the LSD no-hitter or the pens full of Coke. So that's for another time. But thank you, AJ. Right, I really appreciate it, man.
Get it.
Right on. So that's AJ Daulerio. Obviously, he was put through the ringer by his own devices, and now he's on the other side trying to help out with the Small Bow. So check out the Small Bow if you have a chance, and thank you, AJ, for coming on the show. And lots of interesting stuff coming up in the world of Dopey. Lots of big stuff, but I don't love revealing big stuff. But I will reveal this. This morning on the train in, I decided to add a shirt to the Dopey Podcast store. And I'm sure a lot of you guys don't know that there is a Dopey Podcast store. But if you go to dopeypodcast.com and you click on the store, you go to the Dopey Podcast store. And this morning, I made T-shirts and long sleeve shirts that I call Just the Head, which is just the Dopey head. Just in case you don't want to have something that says Dopey, it's just the head. And I made long sleeves, I think are $25, and short sleeves, I think are $20. And if you want one, I made a lot of colors. And if you don't, that's fine too. But I always wanted a just the head shirt. I think I'm going to get a black on black for myself. I'm also just in the process of making new stickers. I just sent out a ton of sticker packages to people who Venmo'd me for stickers. So if you're dying for Dopey stickers and you want the basic ones, send $10, Venmo it to Dopey Podcast. If you want the fancy ones, send 15. If you want to give more money, send 20. I'll send more stickers, and that's Venmo at Dopey Podcast. Now I'm going to read an email, and this is from Tony. I don't want to say her last name, and I'm assuming it's a woman because she spells it with an I. But maybe it's not a woman. I don't know. She says, "Hi, Dave. I'm on a road trip from Texas to Kentucky, so I thought since I have 12 hours of sitting, I'll finally send in an email. First, I want to say I love the Dopey Nation. They are the family of misfits I've wanted/needed my whole life. I love the woman, I apologize, I can't remember her name, who called in about using even though she was about to be a mama. That is my own story, and it was a dark one. One that I haven't told many about until now, of course, because I was so terribly scared of being judged, or someone would look at me as the monster I once felt like. This shit is no joke. It grabs a hold of you, tight, and it doesn't let go no matter who else it's hurting. I just wanted to thank that young lady. Her story made me feel not so alone out here. Almost all of my stories are sad, and I'm not one to bring a room down. I do have one story of the first time my friend let me meet the dealer. I had been asking for weeks, and she finally let me do it. When he pulled up, she gave me a wad of cash and told me to ask for 3 20s. Black tar. It should have been $60. I did, and we did the exchange. Then, as I was walking away feeling all giddy, he yelled, "Hey!" I looked back, then looked at her and her brother telling me to come on, run. I'm jumping in the car and we hear gunshots. He was shooting at us. Apparently they gave me $7, and I was just so excited to meet him so I could start going straight to him instead of going through my friends and breaking them off. I didn't even pay attention to how much cash they handed me. He didn't chase us, probably because we were right outside a major highway, but needless to say, I didn't get to go through him ever again. On the flip side, we had an extra $53. That was the very beginning of a long and dark habit, when I was fresh and naive and I was really scared. It's funny, the stupid shit I got myself into the next 11 years after that incident didn't faze me a bit. Crazy how that works, right? I love the show, Dave, and I'm so happy for you. You're doing such a great job. Stay strong, and toodles for Chris, Tony G. I love that story. It's a classic Dopey story. I don't know if I've told the story on the show before, but I think I have. When I was living in Los Angeles, I was living in a house with Todd and Jeremy, and Jeremy was in a play, and he always had this prop money around, and he had all these fake 50s. And I had just developed a dope habit, and the way we would cop dope, I think I told the story on the show in the beginning, and if I did, I apologize. I probably told the story 2.5 years ago if I did. But me and Todd would drive down to downtown L.A., and if you drive down there, I don't know how it is now, but, like I want to say 10 years ago or longer, I want to say 15 years ago, if you drove down there, it was like a drive-through. You drive up to the corner and a bunch of Mexican kids jump up to your car and you give them money and you drive away. And we drove down there and we bought like 20 balloons or something for $100, but it was fake money. And it was like the greatest day of our lives. And we didn't want to go back. I think we went someplace else the next day, but the money looked pretty fucking real. If you guys have, I'm sure a lot of you guys have stories about beating dealers. Send in a good beating a dealer story to dopeypodcast@gmail.com. And even better yet, send in a voicemail on beating a dealer. I love beating a dealer stories. And if you're a dealer and you listen to Dopey and you got beat, send in a How I Got Beat by the Junkie story. That would be awesome. Now I want to play a voicemail. This is a very serious voicemail, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of that email where it's like a guy who wanted to meet the dealer kind of thing. And this is one of the Dopey Twitter folks. We did a voicemail of his a few weeks ago. It's animalistic or animistic? I think Animistic Graves. And it's a very serious voicemail talking about suicide, really, or thinking about it.
This story I'm about to tell is something I remind myself whenever I'm feeling suicidal. As addicts, using or in recovery, a lot of us don't want to live. Here's my story of the dealer I knew who shot himself in the face and lived. This was during my early 20s. There was a middleman or middle gal that I used to get oxys from, 40s and the 80s, the kind where you could suck coating off and shoot for instant release. This girl, who I will just say her name was Smashley, would always hook me up, but I could never meet the dealer. I kept pressing her, but she insisted that he doesn't want to be known or seen. I said, yeah, that makes sense. Don't want to get busted. After months of buying, she finally called me saying, he wants to meet you. He's heard of you. Knows you're a good guy. Crazy, but funny. I said, okay, that's fine. Do you guys want to come to my house? She said yes. Then she paused on the phone. I'm warning you. Just don't look at his face too long. I said, what? She said, well, he is very ashamed. If you didn't know, we put a gun in his mouth and blew his head off, but he lived. That's why he gets oxys. That's why he doesn't deal with people. I said, hey, that's okay. So they came to my house. I opened the door. I welcomed them. Left side of his face was clearly fucked up. Reconstructive surgery didn't do much. So we all shut up, got high. Then I asked him, so why'd you try killing yourself? Smashley looked nervous. She wasn't happy. He wasn't. He told me. I was so sick of my life. I couldn't live with being an addict. My life was going nowhere. So I went to the basement of my parents' house, put the handgun in my mouth, and pulled the trigger. I must have missed because the recoil didn't hit my whole brain, just half of my one side. I remember waking up, feeling wet. My eyes were so blurry I couldn't see. I tried to wipe the wet away from my eyes, and then I remembered, this is blood. I didn't die. My suicide attempt failed. I felt so much regret. Whatever pain I was feeling wasn't worth what I had just done. Hear me. If you ever feel like killing yourself, don't. I really didn't want to die. I got a second chance. I awoke with blood and regret. To this day, I remember this tale whenever I feel like killing myself. I remember his story. He died years later. He was super high and fell downstairs as his head was very brittle. Literally, a punch to the head would kill him because his head was so smashed and fucked up. As for Smashley, she was involved in a fire that burned her whole body and had third-degree burns. I don't know if she nodded out or was drunk, but she caught her apartment on fire, and she's alive, I think. And today, and she has a kid. She's a good person. I saw her a couple months ago. But so that's the story, Dopey Nation. Suicide isn't the answer. It's an emotion that you feel, but please don't act on it. It will pass. It isn't worth it. Love you, Dave. Rest in peace, Chris. Stay strong, fiends.
So that's Animistic Graves from Twitter. Love the Dopey Twitter people. Yeah, I would reconsider suicide if you guys are thinking about killing yourselves. I shouldn't laugh about it, but obviously, if you don't kill yourself, you might find all sorts of other reasons to live. And then there's this dude on Twitter named Justin who wanted a shout out. And Justin from England, the guy who rambles, he's always participating and he's always trying to like further the Dopey cause. So thank you, Justin, for what you do. And he wrote a piece on us for The Fix, which was great. Oh, and then the article on The Fix came out. David Kono. He wrote some beautiful stuff about the show. So thank you, David. Thank you, everybody. Before we go, we are hot on the trail of our 2 millionth download, which is happening very fast. And I believe it's going to happen very soon. My dad has his prediction. I want to know your guys' predictions. And it's going to be, I think the first ever actual Dopey contest, which is predict the day and time of the 2 millionth download. And if you do, you can get either a short sleeve or a long sleeve, just the head shirt of your color. You choose. Winner's choice. So send in an email. Give me the fucking prediction of when we're going to hit 2 million downloads. And before I go, I'm just going to read the Dopey review of the week. Dopey review of the week. Hold on. Let's find the Dopey reviews. Hold on. All right. This review is from Big Kid Rye. It's from May 11th, 2019. And he says, Dopey is my new addiction. Dopey the podcast about the podcast Dopey, and this is a review about that podcast. Hands down, I love having Chris and Dave in my headspace. I first heard of Dopey when the interview of the baby gorilla Artie Lang. Shortly afterwards, we lost Chris. I went back and started with episode 1. At first, I wanted to listen and see if I can find any signs of Chris's downfall. I can't, but I can say I love this show more than clam chowder from Gloucester, Massachusetts. Keep your head up, Dave, and stay strong, Dopey Nation. ATD Ryan. What is ATD? I don't know. I have no idea what that is. If you know what that is, send me an email. Send in a voicemail. Stay strong, Dopey Nation. Thank you, everybody, for everything you do. And fucking toodles for Chris.
I want to take a walk around the world. I wonder would it do me any good? Until I get some money in my pocket, then I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood. But I want to be good so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And I want to take a ride up in the sky. Watch this aeroplane just pass me by. And I want to see a Lear jetliner take a dive, just to show all of these people what it means to be alive. But I want to be good so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And my shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. Shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. And I wonder would they pay it any mind when I leave this busted city far behind. I'll take the high road, however far it winds, because peace and love are very, very, very hard to find. And I want to be good so bad. Want to be good so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. Damn it, all these suckers make me mad. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And these suckers make me mad, and I want to call my dad. And it's all I ever had. 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 And these suckers make me mad, and it's all I ever had. And I want to call my dad. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had.